Welcome to the Low Demand Parenting Podcast, where we drop the pressure, find the joy, and thrive, even when it feels like life is stuck on level 12 hard. I'm Amanda Diekman, author, autistic adult, and mom of 3. I'm not here as an expert, but a fellow traveler. Together, we're learning how to live more gently, authentically, and vibrantly in this wild parenting life. Before we get into today's incredible episode, I want to let you know that after a many month hiatus, no thank you, chronic illness, I am back to teaching the Low Demand Parenting Masterclass. And I couldn't be more excited because this is the best way to learn this method, both with your head and with your heart. I found that low demand is much more of an art than it is a science, and that we have to be safe enough, supported enough, creative enough, imaginative enough to show up for our kids in this very adaptive way. And so the masterclass it's a wraparound. It provides community and connection and friendship and a group of people who actually understand the parameters that you are working within, as well as much powerful concrete teaching as I could pour into one 3-month container. It's ideal for you to do with your parenting partner, co-parent, really involved grandparent, and we give you 2 logins so 2 people can do it together, but also at their own pace. There's sliding scale spots, and it would be such an honor to walk with you. Today on the podcast, I am talking with Ambreia Meadows-Fernandez, who is a storyteller, a public speaker, and a motherhood scholar. Ambreia found her writing voice in the aftermath of birth trauma, something she will briefly mention in this episode. So that is a small trigger warning. That experience compelled her to share her story and to create the account Freeblackmotherhood, which has become a powerful way of mothering that asks Black mothers and others to prioritize self-love and authentic expression in all things, while also imagining a world where Black women are free to feel. I loved talking to Ambreia and the intersection she stands at as neurodivergent mother to neurodivergent children, and someone who has thought deeply about the role of motherhood in our varying lives. Ambreia, welcome. I'm so glad you're here for this conversation.
Thank you.
So you write online and in many places as under Freeblackmotherhood. I would love to know, what does freedom in motherhood mean to you, and Freeblackmotherhood in particular?
So thinking about my journey, in many ways, I kind of found myself in Freeblackmotherhood because the motherhood I was experiencing was suffocating me. There were so many different parts and expectations in life that did not come natural to who I was. And then I felt like I ended up in this position where I had to be someone different in order to be a more valid mother to my children. And at that time, I didn't have the language of Freeblackmotherhood, but I just knew it didn't feel right in my gut. And so the way that I found myself like exploring and dabbling into this concept of Freeblackmotherhood is kind of twofold. I am a reproductive justice advocate. And so because of that passion, I got tapped in with Sister Song, and I went to the conference, and I noticed that I saw parents represented so differently than how I got to see. Like they were just like lots of different colors, lots of different genders, lots of different practices. And then that's when the seed was planted that I wanted a more expansive view of motherhood. I didn't know what that looked like at the time or how that would take me. But when I was working on my master in American Studies, I ended up learning about this English legal principle called partus sequitur ventrem that was formalized during enslavement. And what it basically translates to is the status of the child follows the mother. And in that moment, it suffocated me and forced me to rethink just how I had been moving through the world, like at all, because I'm sure you've seen, like, there's a lot of conversation on like raising liberated Black children right now. And it is like this deep hope after generations and legacies of systemic racism and oppression. But what I never saw discussed is what Party Sequitur Ventrum offered me, that my children could not inherit a status that I did not hold for myself.
Mm.
And so going through that process and realizing, like, wait a second, I want liberated Black babies. I have to be a liberated Black mother. And so then I got to that place you were speaking of, is like, what does freedom look like for me? Freedom looks like authentic motherhood that is true to all of my skills and nuances. Freedom looks like freedom of emotional transparency in ways that I very rarely got to see mothers, let alone Black mothers, express. Freedom looks like intergenerational healing and like self-awareness. And so that's kind of my short version of the journey through. And I've just kind of been going with it since then.
Motherhood as a construct is often idealized as a role that is all about self-sacrifice, that it's like it's built for us to give ourselves away. So, how have you, first of all, deconstructed that idea of that the best mother, that a good mother is a martyr? And
Mm.
then how do you challenge that myth?
So I guess I'd start with the process of deconstruction, right? So again, my master's in Americans is in American Studies, but I ended up using that time to basically become a scholar of motherhood. And I started out learning about Black women's reproductive experiences, but I'll never forget, like, one of my classes, like, we were learning about like the construction of gender and purity and all these other kind of things. And we learned how it is impossible to understand white women or Black women's experiences apart from each other, because societally they have been flipped, as they have
Yes.
been treated as two sides of one coin. And so, of course, that meant that while I found a lot of value in scholars like Patricia Hill Collins that talks about like the ways that Black women practice mothering, I also had to do some revisiting of like the other scholars, thinking about those early like motherhood scholars like Adrienne Rich, who wrote Of Woman Born, and giving us this breakdown that has been literally like perspective changing for me about motherhood as a practice versus motherhood as an institution. Right. And so motherhood as a practice are the things that we do that allow us to be there and support and nurture and kind of grow alongside our children. Right. Motherhood as an institution are those social pressures that we hate, those expectations that say we are supposed to die when our children are born, this idea that we are supposed to like basically raise our children to reinforce a system that oppresses us. That is where that institution comes up. And so being exposed to that information really made me think about how to separate that institution from that practice in my life. And the way that I've been describing it recently is thinking about martyr-based motherhood, right? This idea that, again, there is the expectation that once our children are born, we die. And for many of us, that is metaphorical, but also for many of us, that's literal. Like the example that I call on most often is I had retained placenta with both of my children in this nation where Black women are dying 3 to 4 times more frequently giving birth, right? Like highest rates of maternal mortality of any developed nation. And when we say that we refuse to address those concerns, we are literally saying that we are all right with mothers and mothering people dying in the process of bringing our
Mm.
children into this world, right? And so, again, it started with that risk of death that I experienced during labor. And then I found that that continued in my mothering experience. Like, oh, okay, you should lose your hobbies. Oh, okay, you should be hungry and look, eat your food cold. Oh, okay, you don't get any water because you don't have time to drink anything. You're supposed to like just everything, taking every amount of life force that you have. And me realizing that if that was motherhood, I don't want the shit. I don't like, if
Mm-hmm.
that is what it was, I would rather not ever have any kids and go to my husband and say, here you go, single dad, bye, like, than have to literally surrender my full humanity and existence because I dared to add another layer by having children. And so since then, I've just been exploring it.
Tell us some about the practices that you've been exploring that have to do with this kind of reclaiming that you're talking about. Because when the institution is all around us and it's so oppressive, it's like trying to breathe in, I mean, I live in the South, so like in 100-degree humidity, it's like
Oh, yeah.
I can get the air in, but it doesn't feel good. So freedom and liberation is just, it's a journey, is a process. And so what are some of the things that you've been playing around with as you take some steps in this direction?
The things that I have been playing around with, it really depends on the day. So the first thing that I have played around with is again exposing myself to scholarship on motherhood. I'm a nerd through and through. And so having access to like folks who came before me who are making sense of this
Mm.
process, it's been really nourishing for me. And one of the things that I've found is people, just like people don't take mothers and mothering people seriously, they don't take motherhood scholars seriously. They don't pay attention to all of the things that we have to offer to academia, to human studies, to racial and gender studies. It's oversimplified as motherhood, but it intersects with so many areas, so many important areas,
Hmm.
because as a mother, you often have to be an everything, which is an issue in itself. So scholarship is one thing that has been, as they say, giving me life. Another
Hmm.
thing that is really helpful to me is I am super into like yoga, and these days I'm really loving Eastern philosophy. And the reason that those things are helpful to me is because I've noticed that Eastern philosophy, they're often more concerned with like unity of the selves and being present in duality as opposed to the separatism and the oversimplification that we have in Western culture. And so being exposed to like yogic philosophy more specifically is allowing me to one, be present in a moment and have that opportunity to pause and reflect and see how I'm responding to my children and how I'm expecting myself to respond in a circumstance. And it allows me to hold that both and, right? Like it is possible that my children are getting on my beep beep nerves. It is also possible that
Hmm.
as a mother, I get to hold those feelings and understand that they get to have a human experience that is present with imperfection, annoying people, like doing all these other things. Again, like that's a part of
Mm.
their experience. And so trying to hold space for both of those. And I'm not always successful, but at any moment I try. And another thing that's been really helpful to me is being in community with my mother. I know that is a liberty
Mm.
and a privilege that everyone doesn't have access to. But when I tell you intergenerational conversations save lives, because it allows me to see that cycle and that shared experience between my mother and I and my children and I more visibly. Like, as a quick example, my children, we're a household of neurodivergent folks. My children are very talkative, right? And it's so easy to get overwhelmed when it's like it's like all the time. And then my mom was like, well, when you were little, you talked so much, I would cry in the bathtub. And it's like, okay, well, mom, that's not really helpful, but also thank you for reminding me that the stuff that I am frustrated with them about, I'm not that far removed. Like it's just the journey before you learn those social boundaries, before you go through those other things. And neither of us is wrong. I am not wrong for being overwhelmed, and they are not wrong for wanting to express themselves. We're just in a journey.
That's right. Two truths is the way a friend of mine always says it. She puts her hands out. She's like, two truths, Amanda, two truths. It's like, can we hold them both? You mentioned the reductive way that our culture kind of wants to zero sum everything. Like either the kids get to be heard or the mom gets to feel sane in her home. And then we use power and control over our kids in order to get our needs met. When what it does is it's flattening out. And so many of our best solutions, me and my kids, to those moments are then done collaboratively. Where I'm like, you need to talk a lot about this very specific anime character, and I'm excited for you. And also, I don't think I can hear anything else about him today. So where can we take this need and you can get it met from somebody else? It's not me. I find that if I said, you're talking too much, go to your room, some kind of flatten it out, control and power approach, that I'm not being particularly free either, that I walk away feeling like that wasn't what I wanted. In the two truths, part of what we have to face is our own feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt and unknowing. I don't know what to do when I'm overwhelmed and my kids are talking too much. I don't know how to solve this. And so, how do we hold that and a sense of confidence and authority and an inner strength to bring forward to help lead our kids through those moments? Like, how do you hold those particular two truths?
I like this question. And my first answer is going to be a cop-out answer that I don't know. On the journey. My second answer is like when I have things that my friends say, and I don't want to say I know or don't know, I say I have a curiosity, right? And so, like, my curiosity around that, asking how we can less go for like confidence and authority and more go for accompaniment. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that term is kind of rooted in the activist tradition and thinking about allyship and things of that nature when it comes to being in community with oppressed people. Like, how do I not overshadow you in your experience? How do I not leave you to fight it alone? How do you know that I am here and alongside you as you navigate the things of the world? And I think that systemic oppression operates in certain ways, but I also think that a lot of those systemic elements of oppression carry into our interpersonal dynamics in the way households function, in the way children are treated, in the way like some people feel disposable and others don't in the household, in the family. And again, I would challenge myself, and I am challenging myself. How can I be as transparent as possible with my children so they know we're doing this together? And I tell my children at every opportunity, like, I don't know. Like, I've never done this before. There has never been a moment that I have been here with you at this age and stage. How can we figure it out together? And I know that may not be like an easy, quick fix, satisfactory answer, but that's what I'm trying to model in my house.
Yes, that's exactly how I face it with my kids too, is a real honesty around the not knowing without shaming myself that like I should know, or that I should be further along than this, or that they should be less hard to parent or whatever, like kind of messaging I might send down the line, that we're okay right where we are and we don't know.
Another thing that came to mind that I wanted to kind of comment on with that is, in addition to like me thinking about martyr-based motherhood, I also spend a lot of time seeing how like achievement culture comes into parenting. And like most of us, we went through school and we were like either praised or shamed for how we did in school. And it's like you needed 70% to pass. But you wanted an 80, you wanted a 90, you wanted 100. And we carried those same unrealistic standards of perfectionism that were never really practical or serving us, and often didn't even measure how well we grasped information anyway. And we brought it into our parenting journeys. And so this idea of not knowing is failure, right? This idea of losing your temper one day and yelling is failure. This idea of like, oh my gosh, I thought about like tapping you on the butt is failure, right? As opposed to seeing it for the journey and being mindful of it so you can pivot, because the goal is not to pass. The goal is to raise humans that don't have to spend their entire lives like repairing their relationship with themselves or us, right? And also for us not to walk around with a life full of trauma, feeling like we failed them, because that hurts us too.
You talk a lot about the power and the importance of pausing in yourself and in relationship with your kids in a mindful way. And so many parents want to do this and intend to do this, but get caught up in their own reactions that may end up looking more like the parent that they had, that they're trying to shift. I think many of us are aware of the trigger model, that we get triggered and so we do things that we don't want to. One of the ways that
Mhm.
I'm trying to shift this narrative for parents is around understanding the demands that we're facing as parents, that the asks of us are too much. and that it is actually in saying, I can't do that, I can't be that, that we actually get enough inner space and inner freedom to be the parent we want to be. I'm wondering if, from your vantage point, what kinds of demands do you see? What kind of unrealistic expectations or demands are getting in the way of parents just being able to pause and have that kind of mindful moment for themselves?
I think there are so many, right? So many demands in the way, like literally just like imagine a doorway covered in demands, a cult of demands on your back, just everywhere. And I know that they vary from person to person, like what those expectations and demands are, like thinking about like racial and cultural differences. The demand and the pressure to have an excellent child is going to hit me in specific ways as a Black mother because I'm already up against wanting them to have the best life and experiences possible, and also false narratives. Some demands are nonsense and other demands are survival. The demands that are getting in the way are everywhere. And I think that a lot of the demands that show up for us is, again, this demand to be everything for our children. And like that might sound strange, right? That the expectation to be everything is a barrier. But when you are raising children with the expectation that you should fulfill all their needs and that there is no room for mistakes, the stakes are higher, the pressure is higher. And so one of the things that I think about a lot that folks may or may not know is that irritability is often a symptom of anxiety, right? Irritability is often a symptom of depression, right? And what is more overwhelming and more likely to make you anxious or depressed than feeling like you're supposed to be everything for your child and you fail? And so then you get in this pattern, right? And you're snapping, right? And it's like, okay, well, I failed. And now I am in my head thinking about the ways that I have not met your needs because I'm supposed to meet all of them and unable to be here with you in what's happening. And then, of course, that's connected to pressure for perfection in parenting. And so, what has been helping me with that journey is, again, like reading. And so, right now, I am reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He talks about two types of time. He talks about psychological time and clock time. And so he says that so often we are caught up in psychological time, either in the past of who we wish we would have been or the future of how we want things to be different, that we're not able to be present in what's here right now. And so when you slow down in what is here right now, you don't have to be reactive because you're witnessing it as it's unfolding. And it sounds impossible at first, and it sounds overwhelming and impractical. But I am saying that as a person who didn't get popped a lot as a kid, but did sometimes. And like, naturally, if that was the environment I was brought up in, that's going to be a response. There was a stage that it was like, okay, you're going to get like a quick tap on the hand or something, right? And then that became, okay, we're not going to do that, but I'm still going to think about it. And then as I got more present, like 2 years into the game, I don't even see physical punishment as a possible, like it doesn't come to my mind anymore, which is crazy, right? Because I've literally rewired my brain and how it responds to things in the moment. Because the truth of the matter is, if you are expected to be a perfect parent, what excuse do you have not to raise perfect kids? And that means they have no stakes. And that fails everybody because one, you have to parent perfectly so they can be perfect. And then again, when they fail, it's like, what's wrong with you? You had a perfect mother, you had a perfect father, you had a perfect aunt, uncle, everything. Why didn't you turn out perfect? And then that adds that pressure to them also. And so one of the things that I talk about when I have an opportunity is being an imperfect parent is one of the best gifts you can give your children because they know when they go through life and the challenges, they can reach out and contact you and they have a model.
That's fantastic. There's so much freedom in your words. As you look forward, without kind of future tripping too far, but as you think about the kind of kids you're wanting to raise and that you want them to help shape, how do you think about the intersection between like the very concrete mothering that you're doing of these incredible children and this like movements for justice and systemic work. Like, how does our unique and very small role in parenting our kids end up reshaping the world?
Oh, look, I'm going to counter you there and say it's not small, it's big. Because every human that exists is either thinking about how they were raised or how they weren't raised. Like either they are thinking about the gaps in how they were brought up, or they are thinking about the presence that they experienced. And we talk a lot about oppression and systems like they exist outside of humans. But we are the systems. We are the actors and the decision makers. And so raising, for me, my goal is going to be specific because I'm raising young Black kids to have like a sense of identity in this world, as opposed to like some of my white friends, their journey is going to look different from mine. But my goal is to raise children who are so in touch with themselves that they can see themselves in others and not see that separation and that divorce of identity. So you are more likely to care for you, more likely to care for others. And in real and authentic relationship, you don't want to hurt people that are connected to you. You don't want to hurt yourself. You want to be self-aware. Like one thing I don't want for my kids that I get caught up in is I am involved in like a lot of different justice-oriented activities here. And I'm tired. I'm ran to the ground. I don't want that for them. I want them to operate in a way that uses their skills to make the shifts that they can. And then I want them to be in community and build coalitions with those who have different skills. And I want them to know the importance of community with the self and the contradictions, and community with the larger world.
They'll know themselves well enough also to be able to say when that's enough. I've given what I have to give. It comes back to that martyrdom idea. You don't want them even to give themselves away for movements for justice. We can't martyr there either. Bold, and I agree with you, not small in any way, world-changing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the wisdom that you have shared today and for the ways that you regularly show up. Like the way you take your nerd brain and translate it into on the ground reality is just truly fantastic. So I love that you're out there in the world bringing your full self. Thank you for bringing it to us today. If this podcast is speaking to your soul, you can subscribe through wherever you get your own podcasts. Even better, if you feel the nudge, head on over to Apple Podcasts in particular and leave us a review. It's such a helpful way for new people to also get to experience what this podcast wants to bring into their lives. I'm Amanda. Remember, it takes great strength to let things go. I'll see you next week.